On the weekend, journalist Troy Bramston had a great story, an interview with former Prime Minister John Howard. He says, Mr. Howard said the Liberal Party had lost the election in May because it lacked a manifesto for reform. Now, do you agree with that? And if so, are there moves within the party to remedy that?
Yeah, look, well, I don't know that there are necessarily, you perhaps wouldn't get a consistent view at this stage so close to an election as to whether or not that's needed. I think there is a certain element of truth about that, I have to say. I once again, taking that issue of the culture wars back, I think there were some fights that we probably should have taken on. And it's difficult. I mean, I think a large portion of that term was taken up with COVID madness. But once again, this issue of being able to distinguish ourselves from Labor and the Greens is the one that really troubles me. I've said it consistently since the election and prior to, if we're going to continue to be Labor Lite or the Greens, we will lose at state and federal level all the time. I don't see that under Peter Dutton. I mean, we all know Peter to be a principled person, somebody that will stand for these values. He's been a very good defence minister and a very, very good Home Affairs minister. So I would be expecting that, once the sort of rubber hits the road with the policy agenda, we will start to see some things being put in there. And of course, that proclamation that we're going to investigate nuclear power early on was music to my ears. Something I spoke about in my maiden speech, and it is a point of policy differentiation. So I think people can expect those things to come. And that's what needs to happen. I don't buy this argument that we lost the election because we weren't teal enough. That never made any sense to me. Those electorates were essentially the same demographically as they were 3 years prior. The only thing that shifted, I think, was the perception that the party perhaps had drifted from its values. And I think that's the real danger here. So, look, I think Peter Dutton's going to be a good campaigner. He's going to surprise a lot of people. And I look forward to it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the Liberal Party's values. I mean, Howard also said that, quote, factionalism has poisoned, unquote, the party. Now, I mean, Howard also once famously described the party as a broad church, but can a broad church adhere to the same values? I mean, is that what's driving the party apart at the moment?
Look, I think it can. I think it has before. And of course, you don't have to think back too much prior to that to remember the famous battles of Peacock and Howard in the mid-'80s and the late 80s, of course. So I have to say, I think there's a little bit of selective memory going on there, from the elder statesman, which of course is, a great Prime Minister's prerogative to do so. But I don't know. I don't know that factionalism really has any more or less of a place than it does now in the Liberal Party, or that it has in other parties. It is a simple byproduct of the Liberal Party being able to speak its mind. There are people that hold much more left-wing views than I would, perhaps you would, Fred, and there are people that probably even hold more conservative views than both of us as well. But, that's the way it is. I think they do manage. But the one thing that can't happen is the party can't lean to the left too far, because then the sort of the spectre of factionalism becomes, more obvious, I think. And I always find that, that the left will say that when the ship is righting itself. So I'm hopeful that we'll see, a more return to the party's values, which is the party is a Menzies, free speech, freedom of choice. These are things that have all been really missing and important in the last little period. So, I'm not convinced factionalism has increased or otherwise over the last 30 years. I think it's all pretty much the same.